Welcome to the HMO Property Show. By investors, for investors. Catch us weekly as we discuss all things cash flow positive property investing. Whether you're a seasoned investor, a new landlord, or just curious about property investing, this is the podcast for you. Sponsored by the Co-Living Collective, your trusted partner in creating vibrant and sustainable shared living experiences. Visit us at colivingcollective.com.au to learn more.
Welcome back to the HMO Property Show. I'm your host, Neil Gibb, and today I've got a very experienced property developer joining me from all the way on the other side of the country. It's Mr. Rob Flux. Rob, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Neil, how are you, mate? And
good,
hello,
thank you.
listeners.
I'm very good, thank you, mate. Thank you for joining us.
So good.
Rob, as a property developer, one of the things I always find hard to explain is what we do for a living, right? So you're at a barbecue, somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, mate, what do you do for a living?" What do you say to them?
I'm probably a little bit unique to some of the other property developers out there, mate. I run the largest property networking group in the country. So, I run a community of 37,500 people. So my response is that I'm teaching small-scale developers, mums and dads, how to actually get into this property development game.
Property development right now, housing shortages right across the country, mass migration going on. Like, how important is property development right now and getting it right and bringing a supply to the market?
It is absolutely critical, and there are so many opportunities that are presenting themselves at the moment because of changes in legislation from all the different state governments trying to fast-track approvals, all the incentives that are coming out of state governments, federal governments, that sort of thing. It's all pushing for property development being the antidote to our housing crisis. But even as recently as the budget changes the other week, mate, that is getting a whole bunch of investors out of the market and pivoting them from second-hand stock to brand spanking new stock. All the incentives are on brand new stock. And who supplies that? That's us, mate. It's getting cheaper to buy stock at the moment because all the investors have actually left the second-hand stock, and it's going to be way more expensive to sell it because everyone's going to be competing for the brand new stock.
To get the incentives from the government. Beautiful, beautiful. So I suppose the question that's on my mind now, Rob, is how do you go to the position you're in now to running a community of 37,000 people, did you say?
37 and a half, yeah.
Phenomenal. How do you go from whatever you were doing previously, because nobody's born a property developer, nobody's born a coach or a mentor, and nobody's born with a 37,500 community, right? So what's the journey? How did you start out? What were the steps, and how have you ended up with this community that you've built?
It was a little bit of a meandering journey. So if we go all the way back, I bought my very first house at the age of 18 and my first investment property at the age of 21 and owned my first house outright at the age of 24. And it came about from, a very humble beginning, okay? I didn't have any money. As a matter of fact, I grew up in a place called Darwin and we went through Cyclone Tracy, and Cyclone Tracy destroyed our house, and I was living underneath the floorboards of a house for about 5 years, having a shower out of a garden hose behind a corrugated iron curtain. And so I basically looked at that and went, I do not want this to be my life. And so I set about on a mission to go, I'm going to be, manufacturing my wealth in some way, shape or form, because I saw the challenges that mum and dad went through in just trying to look after us as kids, and went, what can I do to actually make my life better and the life of my kids better. And then the opportunity came about that mum and dad, because that house was destroyed, it was only 7 months old, it was brand spanking new, they got themselves into a little bit of financial distress because they weren't insured. And so they had to rebuild and pay for the old house and the new house. And so I ended up buying my first house off of them in order to save them from going under.
Right, okay.
Now that is a big kind of ask for an 18-year-old, but it ended up that mum and dad were paying me rent. And so I was a landlord at a very, very early age until stupidly one night I came home after, as normal 18 and 19-year-olds do, go out and on a bit of a bender. And mum said to me, hey, I don't think you should be doing that. And as a 19-year-old, I went, Mum, it's my house, it's my rules. And that didn't go down well, mate. So So basically they looked at each other and looked at their watch and went, it's probably time for us to go. And at that point, we were very fast approaching, I guess, the recession that we had to have, where interest rates went up to 17% and that sort of thing. And I had to get myself into a situation where I was subletting rooms out to actually pay for the house. So, you know, you're in this HMO community, mate. I was in HMO way back then, and I don't want to give away my age, but there's no hair left, so it's been a while. So, but going through that, I'm subletting the rooms out. I realized, hey, I can actually get by even in these really, really difficult times. And that created an opportunity to actually buy into the market while it was quite depressed. And I'd read a book, a lady by the name of Jan Summers, if anyone's actually come across Jan, and she was talking all about negative gearing. And I went, okay, well, I'm going to be a property investor. And at the age of 21, I bought my first house, my first investment property. And at the time, I got the timing right. I won't say I was an expert. You know, I'd read a total of one book, right? And so that was the entirety of my knowledge. And because I bought it at the top of the market, the top of interest rates, that meant the bottom of the market. When it started to recover, it recovered big very fast.
But it did.
And so very, very quickly, I guess the capital growth that I got out of that investment property got me to a point where when I sold that down, I was able to own my PPR outright at the age of 24. And I went, hey, this property this is easy. Anyone can do that. And so I went on a journey of investing. I did 20 years of investing with negative gearing and all the issues and challenges with, hey, I haven't got enough equity to get into the next one. I haven't got enough serviceability, hitting glass ceilings. But despite all of that, 20 years on, at the age of 38, on paper, mate, I could retire. So that was my goal, and I didn't quite get there. The age of 37, I had to pack all my toys up and put them into the center and went through a divorce and had to reset all of that. And I went, it took me 20 years to get to that spot. I don't want to take 20 years to do it again, because I saw the hassles and the heartache, and even though it worked, and I saw this property development gig and went, well, if I manufacture my profits, then I don't have to take 20 years to get there. So I set myself a journey of, I'm going to educate myself, and I spent about $120,000 on my education trying to learn this property development game. And at the end of that was very motivated and inspired, but most of the education that I got was more telling me I could do it, but not telling me how I could do it, if you know what I mean.
Know what you mean? Yeah.
And so that's when I read a book, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich.
Mm-hmm.
And it talked about the power of the mastermind. And what we did is we got a mastermind of 5 people around my kitchen table that had pretty much all gone through similar journeys where we knew enough, but we didn't know everything. But collectively, we figured we could work it out. And as a mate invited a mate and they invited another mate, then all of a sudden, I started running, I guess, a networking group, 17 people at the very first one. And next month, mate, we are 14 years old. Wow. From that very, very first meeting. And we now run networking events all the way around the country, including where you are in Perth. But we run them Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide and Perth, 55 events per year. And I guess since then, I've executed somewhere in the vicinity of 20 odd projects that I guess have done me okay, mate.
Beautiful, beautiful. Lots to learn on that journey, Rob, when you kind of unpack it, right? Sounds like you were a bit of an accidental landlord in the early stages.
Absolutely, I would say that, yes.
Yeah, and then the journey of, learning as you go, making mistakes, getting back up, even going through the divorce, losing everything and starting again. I think there's a lot in there for people that are listening to this, that it doesn't matter where you are or what happens in life, there's always another chance to get up and go again, isn't there?
Absolutely. And look, came from nothing, so had to build it the very first time, then lost it, had to build it again. The one thing that I would put out there, Neil, is to say that once you have knowledge, you cannot unlearn it. So you can never learn less. So every piece of knowledge that you put into your head is building on the prior piece of knowledge, and you just get better and better and better. And so long as we look at, I guess, the challenges and obstacles that we face along the way as learning opportunities rather than problems, then everything then becomes so much easier, because our approach on life is just solution focused, not problem focused.
I like it. And you said there as well that the people that come through or the people that are in the community as well, I'm guessing, never had property development experience before. And how many people would you think have came through the PDN and gone into full-time development on the back end? Is there success stories there?
Well, I don't have a number that I can, so we've got coming through the community is one thing. Then we have, I guess, a formal education and mentoring program as well. I guess having come through the formal path, I've got in the vicinity of about 80 that have not just gone full-time development, but actually are, I guess, paper-wise, financially free and I guess earning passive income from the results of their outcomes. And we've got a lot more on the way. I've got a goal to set 1,000 people financially free by the year 2030. So I'm not sure I'll get 1,000 by 2030, but because it takes a few years to get the momentum, mate, I reckon we're going to get pretty damn close because there's a hockey stick, I guess, coming with regards to the solution here. But but there's lots of people that we've helped, not necessarily from ground zero, but they might have come in with some knowledge and you give them one piece of information and sometimes that's all they need to unlock something. And I'd say that's literally thousands of people that we've actually done that to. I guess through our industry experts that come every month, through I guess the podcast that we run ourselves, through people sharing real deals in our community. Yeah, I'd like to think that I've changed a lot of lives, mate.
Sounds like you have. Definitely sounds like you have. You said something interesting earlier as well. You did a lot of courses that told you could do it, but none showed you how to do it. What's the fundamental difference in showing somebody and telling them that it can be done and showing them how it's done?
I'm going to be very cynical here. The person on the other side not necessarily knowing themselves how the industry works. So, and what I mean by that is we are, as property developers, our job is to understand what the requirement of that next generation is actually going to be. Where are people going? Why are they going there? If we understand that, our job is to put the solution in front of them before they realize they need it. If we go back, can't remember the year that Australia was founded, but let's just say 240 years ago, Australia was a one-lot land subdivision. And so every house, every school, every road, every shopping centre, everything has been built by a developer understanding the needs of the community and putting that solution in front of them before they realised they needed it. So our job, when we look at the not just can it be done, but should it be done, where are people going? When I know where they're going, have they started to go there? Is there evidence of other people doing what I'm trying to do there? Can I reverse engineer what that person has done? If I can reverse engineer what that person's done, can I prove that person was profitable? If I can do that and I know the demand is still going there, then there's a good chance that I can make profit too. And so we've systemized it by looking at patterns of data and understanding what is the state government wanting us to do and working with them rather than against them. And, I don't go, hey, I found a cracking site, I wonder what I can force onto it. I instead go, okay, I want to learn this one particular thing. I wonder where that works best. And then I use the deal parameters. Let's just say I'm looking for a duplex. Where does a duplex make money? Rather than, this is the area I've got, I'm going to force a duplex in.
That's how you lose money, right? And in terms of what you said, something there along providing the solution that people want, and sometimes people don't know what they want until you provide it, right? So how do you fine tune that skill and understand what people want? Because Henry Ford said it many years ago, didn't he? If you ask people what they want back then, they would have said faster horses, not a car.
Faster horses.
Yeah. So how do we design a product or a housing typology that we think people want, but they're not sure that they need until it's there for them to live in?
Well, I think we have to go through stages, Neil, in us ourselves learning the process before we can become what I call a market maker. Now, so what you're talking about is being a market maker. If I look at every single suburb in the entire country, we have all gone through the same development cycle, and it looks like a bell curve. Nobody's doing any developments. Lots of people doing developments, nobody doing developments. And so if I understand that bell curve, I don't need to be the first one in to make it work. But I can see 5 or 6 other people go in before me, reverse engineer their deal, prove that they are profitable, I can then go in and I know that there's plenty more room for more deals to happen in that area. I could loiter in that area for a while and make a few deals. But while I'm doing that, I'm learning my trade, I'm learning my skills. Then and only then do I think about, do I want to then be a market maker? And I think that's the key, is to go, I'm not going to go do that deal number one, because that's a really good chance to blow myself up. If I'm the first one in, there's no evidence anyone's done it. There's no evidence what the proof of that, what it's going to sell for. I'm either an absolute genius because I understand that pattern and I know where we are in the cycle, or I'm just rolling the dice. And I don't want to be rolling the dice for deal number one. Now, after, I'm going to say 3 projects, you're very, very fast approaching the capability to be a market maker, because you understand what's actually driving the market. And the key thing is to understand that market, the market driving forces.
And there's also, when you've got them 3 or 4 projects behind you as well, there's a flip in the kind of 80-20 rule from psychology to execution as well, right? In the early stages, you're double guessing everything, over-analysing, procrastinating, and the 80% psychology and 20% execution flips, where it's only 20% psychology and 80% execution, because, like you said, you've got the skills, the knowledge, you become a market maker and you start to see deals very, very easily right in front of you.
Yeah, so there's an exercise that we like to do, which is activating a part of the subconscious brain called the reticular activating system, where the opportunities are always there, but we're not wired to see them. And because we're not wired to see them, our subconscious mind just filters them out and says, well, there are no deals. But once you actually train yourself to go, what does a deal look like? Then you start to see them everywhere. You know, your audience is probably familiar with this. They go out and they buy a brand new car, whatever their brand new car is. Let's just say it's a white Corolla. And the very next day, they see hundreds of these white Corollas on the road, right? Because and up until then, they were more interested in blue Mazdas, right? So all I could see before was blue Mazdas. But as soon as they're in that white Corolla, they see white Corollas everywhere. And that's our subconscious working. That's our reticular activating system saying, once you have conditioned yourself to look for that thing is what you find. And so we've got to train our subconscious to go, what am I looking for?
Deal maker mode.
Yeah, deal maker mode. There you go.
Let's talk about the problem in the market right now, in the housing shortage that we've got, the opportunity that it caters. And how do we get into such a housing shortage when we've got such a big country that we live in? We've got lots of people want to live here. I know I could probably bring 50 to 100 of my friends over straight away if it was straightforward for them to come here. So lots of demand of people wanting to live in this beautiful country. Not enough housing. How have we ended up in this position, and what's the solution, Rob? How do we get in front, because we just seem to be constantly behind at the minute?
Look, to look at how we got here is probably looking back 20 plus years, okay? And when we look back 20 plus years, there are a lot of baby boomers in the market that I guess are now getting to the point where they're about to go into pension phase and retirement phase and those sorts of things, where there's nobody replacing them. So our population growth, it wasn't 2 parents, 2 kids. It was 2 parents, 1 kid. So our population just wasn't growing. So there was becoming less and less people to actually pay the taxes, to pay for the healthcare and pay for the pensions of the boomers that were actually retiring. And so the government had to do something to account for that. So they started bringing more and more migrants in. Now, Australia is a country of migrants. I guess 98% of us are migrants in some way, shape or form. And so it was a natural way to actually, I guess, increase the population. In doing so, I guess we got to a point where we had a combination of events that actually all collided with each other. So one was the health of the building industry wasn't fantastic. I think the way that I guess we train builders to become a builder, you have to be in the trade to actually become a builder. So whether you be a carpenter or whatever, but you have to have been working in that industry for a long time. We didn't actually look at builders as business people, but rather, hey, you know how to swing a hammer, right? And so as a result of that, when tough times started to happen, then the cash flow management and that sort of thing of the builders didn't necessarily work. And a lot of builders started to go under, which then meant we had less builders. And then we had, I guess, things like COVID happen where they're all fixed into fixed price contracts, but the cost of everything went through the roof because logistical supply chains were no longer functioning. And so builders were trapped in these fixed price contracts. When you combine those two things together, we've had more insolvencies in the building industry, since COVID than we had probably in the 20 years prior. And so those two factors combining together, we've got more people coming in because we need to, but we've got less people to build. Those two collide. And then we've got, a historical, challenge where every single state has put more and more red tape in the planning process as we go, so that the building and approval side of things was much, much slower. When you put all of those things together, it was death by 1,000 paper cuts. And so the irony is now we've actually started to bring people in to fill the roles of the tradies to build the houses that they're actually going to be living in. Like that's the silliness of the situation here. But looking at the housing accord, we needed 1.2 million homes in 5 years. We are 7 quarters in. In order to do that, that's 60,000 new dwellings per quarter for 5 years in a row. That's 20 years, 20 quarters in a row. Australia hasn't done 60,000 homes in a quarter for probably 50 years.
Yeah.
Right? So we're trying to get record numbers from a standing start. And so every single state right now is well behind that trajectory. And we are currently on target. When I say currently, we're on target to be about 370,000 homes short of that 1.2 million home target that we're trying to aim for. Where that then gets compounded is budget changes literally 3 weeks ago, where they've recognized that, hey, they want to make some structural changes to how they tax, the country in order to raise some more revenue. But that they've recognized that in itself creates 35,000 less homes just through the way they're doing that. Then that was when they announced it on budget night. And then kind of 6 weeks later, they announced a deal with the Greens where they said, well, now super funds can't buy investment homes. So now they're projecting that's another 40,000 homes short. So when you compound all of that, the 370,000 that was there is now probably closer to 450,000, but we've not yet been able to measure that. It's just projected at this point. So what that means is that lots of people wanting and needing somewhere to live, someone needs to create it. So the opportunity is to say, if we create that stock, the supply and demand pressures means that that's going to push that price point up. And once it pushes that price point up, then clearly, there's profit to be made at the end of that. And right this very second, the changes in the budget have meant lack of confidence in the market. So now we've got a huge buying opportunity where everything's crashed in price, that we now know we're going to be selling into this upward market. Mate, the time to get into property development, if you have not thought about getting into property development before, the time is now, right?
Yes, 100%.
Now, 12 months ago, I said the time was now then, right? And that was because all of the changes in legislation that were happening to fast track the approvals. So since the Housing Accord was announced, every state government has introduced fast-track approval methodologies. Well, I say not every, but I think WA is a little bit lagging behind in that. Sorry, mate. But everyone else is either 10-day approvals or 20-day approvals for the product that the government of that particular area is wanting, right? So it's what we call a jurisdictional bias. When you know what the government wants, then if we build that, life is easy.
Yes.
If we don't know what the government wants, if we try to build that, it's not that it can't be done, but we make our lives hard for no reason.
Yeah. The Western Australian fast track approval thing, that's looking like it would come in next year in 2027. And they're also going to reduce the average lot size for R20 lots down from 800 to 700, which means it could free up around 50,000 development opportunities in Western Australia. So the irony of that, you guys have got a fantastic naming convention for all of your zones. So R20, the 20 is the number of dwellings that you can create in a 1 hectare parcel of land. If I change the minimum lot size in an R20, then it's no longer 20.
So why didn't you just change the zone?
Exactly. Rezone everything.
So every one of your R numbers tell me how many dwellings I can create in a hectare, and then all of a sudden you break your own formula. It's luckily I'm not in politics, mate.
But you do consult to government, I've read somewhere. Is that right?
Sorry, say that again?
You consult to government, is that correct?
We do. So, because of the size of our community, we're very, very fortunate that we are now seen as, I guess, a pseudo industry association for small scale developers. There's associations for the builders, HIA, master builders. There's associations for the big developers, that's people like the UDIA. But there's never, ever been anyone that represents the small scale developer. And so we have taken on that mantle, and we, I guess, do a whole bunch of work in with the Queensland government, the New South Wales government, the Victorian government, and we're trying to, I guess, knock on the door of the other states as well to actually say, well, as strange as it might seem, 80% of all construction in this country is a six-pack and below. That is the small-scale developer that is doing the bulk of the work. And yet nobody is engaging with us with regards to what those rules could and should be to make our life easy. So we've taken on that role. There's a couple of ones in particular that I'm on that are super interesting. So Queensland Government Modern Methods of Construction Working Group. So that is, I guess, the different form factors that become prefab housing. So volumetric, panelised, kit parts, I guess 3D printing and that sort of thing. So we get to see not just, I guess, what are the rules that are happening, but how do we actually start to speed up the delivery of this housing stock? So if I can manufacture houses that take weeks or months to install rather than years to install, then we can have the same number of builders building 2, 3, 4 times as many houses. And so we're seeing huge pivots in that. And that's my current mission in life, is to get my entire community into, I guess, the prefab MMC type world.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I was over in China in November last year, and we went through some prefab factories, some really, really interesting. I think people's perception of prefab and the reality, it's progressed a lot over the years, and some of the prefab stuff we've seen and some of the modular housing typology we've seen over in China was phenomenal. The standard and the spec was incredible.
Yeah, well, I've been inside in the vicinity of 15 factories, both here in Australia and in China as well. What I would say is Australia is lagging behind a long way. We are calling it modern methods of construction, but it's actually not modern. Europe has been doing prefab for well over 40 years. And even in Australia, if we look at places like Tasmania, 200 odd years ago, we were doing prefab manufacturing overseas and bringing it in on the back of a tall ship and doing prefab all the way back then. So prefab is not a new thing. It's just not been widely adopted here in Australia. And so it's really about us coming up to speed. And if you look at places like Sweden, 80% of all construction there is doing some form of prefab. And the reason for that is their winters are so harsh and so long, they can't construct during the entire year. So they have to compress their timelines to actually build in literally weeks. And so they've taken that up, for 40 plus years, they've been doing prefab over there, I guess, as their primary construction approach. So we're only just catching up here in Australia.
And in Western Australia in particular, we've got the country's largest brick manufacturers. So everything we build here is double brick. So we're struggling to go from double brick to timber frame or steel frame because the brick makers have had the kind of monopoly in the market for so long that there's a mindset shift for people to go from double brick to timber frame, brick veneer, steel frame, whatever. So even modular housing right now is seen as a little bit woo-woo for the West Australians, but for the rest of the country, why do you think it's took so long to adapt to modular?
So can I just touch on that double brick thing here? Because I think there's an interesting metaphor that might help people along the way, right? So if I go back 120 years, the gemstone industry didn't value what a diamond was. And so because they didn't value what a diamond was, there was a company called De Beers who came up with a marketing scheme that said that basically a diamond lasts forever and it needs to be 2 months worth of wages from every from every man as a I guess as a symbol of love, right? So it went from absolutely nothing to worth a hell of a lot in a very, very quick period of time. In Perth, you did the exact same thing. You had a brick company who basically put a hammer through a wall and said, you can't do that with brick. And everyone went, we need to do double brick, right? So exactly the same. Then what happened is De Beers kind of ran that market for a long period of time. Double brick appeared for a long period of time. Then I guess the artificial diamond market started to come, and everyone for a long period of time went, no, not going to do artificial diamond. It's not real. And that's the point that we are in the market right this very moment in Perth with regards to no, we're going to still do double brick. And then the cost of the artificial diamond came down so much, and it got to the point where you cannot tell the difference between them. And then now De Beers is about to go broke. Now, and they're about to go broke because the artificial diamond market has gone so aggressively. You can print a 2-carat diamond for about $100. So why would you spend $10,000 buying the same thing when nobody can tell the difference? Now, I don't think we're going to be that extreme, but I think once people start to see and feel what I guess a lightweight construction and then a prefab construction is, how fast it turns up, how easy it is to live in. It's still 7-star energy efficiency rating. When they start to see that, I think the perception of double brick will drop as fast as the diamond market did. And it's really who wants to be the first adopter of that. And there's enough companies doing prefab that have factories in Perth that are building this product right now where they're starting to get some really big inroads, and I see that swing happening real fast, mate, real fast.
I hope so, because there used to be 2 big brick companies and one of them bought the other one out, so now we've just got one huge brick supplier and manufacturer, but we always constantly have shortage of bricklayers. You know, the speed to building double brick is slower than timber frame or tilt panel, whatever other construction method we look at. So, yeah, it needs to change. There's definitely a change in it. We've built quite a few steel frame and timber frame houses as well. But we're seeing now a lot of people in Perth have equity in their properties and are coming to us for help, and they still want double brick over timber frame. So I hope it comes sooner rather than later, Rob. I really do.
I'm going to genuinely, I think what you'll see in 12 to 18 months will be a fundamental shift in what people want, what people are actually starting to ask for as they start to see workable solutions that are very, very cost effective, that can be delivered in half or a quarter of the time, because they don't have the limitations of no brickies, and they don't have the limitations of the speed of that to actually do. If we can deliver something in half the time at I guess even a small discount on the price point, people are going to start to come, let alone if we can actually do that in a large perspective. Now, when we look at prefab, I can show you examples of houses that are, when they get to site, physically from slab on the ground to lock up, 2 days, right? That's if you use what they call volumetric. If you use what they call panelized, that might be maybe a week to lock up, and then maybe 3 or 4 weeks to actually fit out, and maybe 2 or 3 months later by the time you actually get the actual occupation certificate and title to actually get that out the ground. So when we're starting to say, even if we said 3 months as a worst case scenario, that's still a quarter of the time of a current construction. That quarter of a time is quarter of the time less interest, quarter of the time less land tax, quarter of the time less rates. Even if the cost of construction doesn't change at all, if we get no efficiencies in the costing, we get efficiency in the holding costs, which means the cost of that product comes down. And that mind shift, that is the fake diamond starting to take effect, right? And I don't think we're far away. And if I had shares in that brick company, I would be selling that now.
The interesting thing is, as a property developer, time kills deals, right? And if you're building 4, 5, or 6 townhouses, the holding cost on that is substantial. And if you can bring that construction downtime from, like you say, from 12 months to 6 months or even to 4 months, the savings on a project of that size would be substantial, wouldn't it?
like insanely massive. I'm doing a project where we're building 18 townhouses and we're looking at doing prefab there. Our holding cost savings on that one project are in the vicinity of $500,000, right? That's our holding cost savings, right? Now, we've got efficiencies of the build process on top of that, but that is $500,000 that does not need to be passed on to somebody else.
Yep, it goes straight to the bottom line and into your pocket.
Well, we're going to pass that on to, I guess, the ultimate buyer. Does a little bit stay in my pocket? Maybe, but we want to demonstrate that if we can turn these over fast and very, very cost effective, then people want to buy from us. And I can make that point of difference and still keep my margins and not have to be greedy to save every single dollar. And then now my product in a market like this very second, if the market's depressed, my product stands out because, hey, I can get this superior product at a fraction of the cost. Why wouldn't I?
Faster, cheaper. Yeah, it's a win-win. Rob, I want to finish on some quick fire questions, if that's okay.
Go for it.
I'll fire one at you and then you just give me a quick short answer. So, best property development you've ever done?
Best property development was $196,000 profit in 6 weeks.
Nice. Not bad. Worst mistake or biggest lesson on a development project?
Worst lesson, I know what it is, but it's just, who do I dob on here? Look, I had some bad advice from a consultant that we thought there might be a problem. We checked it during due diligence. The consultant gave us the advice that this was going to be okay. We got the development approval, and then we went to construct it. That's when the consultant said, oops, I had my apprentice on that one. And it had we walked out of it in the black, but we left a lot of money on the table.
Okay, that leads me nicely into best advice you've ever been given.
The best advice would be the obvious ones that you get all the time is get yourself a mentor, get yourself a coach. A lot of people use those two words interchangeably. I would say coach is mindset, mentor is skills, right? So having the skills does not mean you have the belief to do it. Having the belief to do it doesn't mean you've got the skills to do it. You need both, right? And I think people use the terminology of those two incorrectly, and they often call someone a coach when they're really a mentor, and vice versa, and they don't realize that that's actually, I guess, both are actually needed. So best advice I was given is get yourself a mentor. And then secondary piece of advice from a completely different person was get yourself a coach. So I'm combining that together to go, you need both.
I like it. One thing, one thing governments could do tomorrow, which would actually move the needle on housing supply.
Look, the National Construction Code needs to be national. There is no point having a National Construction Code and having every single state measure it differently and doing different terminology and different implementations. And they really, really, really need to come together and go, we are genuinely going to deploy this the same way. As we start to get into the faster construction methodologies that inevitably come from prefab, where things happen in a factory, if we're not doing simple things like standardizing on our terminology, then why, I can give you a really good example. In Queensland, we call it a building certifier. In Victoria, they called it a building surveyor, right? Now, they do the same job, but if I want to get something out of a Melbourne factory and install it in Brisbane, then I can't do that because the Queensland legislation says I need to have a certifier, and the Victorian legislation said it has to be a surveyor. So those two things, just using terminology, doesn't line up. So just standardize, guys, and come together rather than every state doing it by themselves.
I think there's a podcast episode in that question alone, isn't there?
I think so, mate. I'm happy to come back.
You were saying earlier about the difference from state and local level. I mean, even with the state policy in place, the local governments still put their own little tweaks and ideas into place and push back on some of the state stuff as well. So, yeah.
That's probably the next level that I would actually say is to say that, I guess, certification, whether you call it a surveyor or a certifier, should, I think, only be in the private industry, and it shouldn't be within the hands of council. Because what happens is every council then implements that differently. So what you then get is a variation on a variation of a variation. And I go from one council and I get one interpretation, go to the next council, I get a different interpretation. Whereas if we had the federal government saying this is the standard, then the state government saying this is how we're deploying that consistently across the country, then how that's measured is the same way every single time. If we just got that part right, we would get rid of so much red tape in this industry that it's not funny.
Like I say, there's definitely an episode in that alone. There's so many nuances and things going on, right? Last question, Rob. Somebody's listening to this right now. They haven't started yet. What's the first thing they should do?
Look, the first thing they should do is firstly work out, is property development for you? That's the very first thing, because it isn't for everyone. And the best way to work that out is to come to a group like ours. So Property Developer Network, we run these events all the way around the country and hang around with other people actually doing it and understand the pain points that they've gone through. And more importantly, see the successes that actually come out of that. In the end, our job is we make money by solving problems. So you want to see other people facing those problems and see that they can actually overachieve it. Look at real world scenarios of people making 6 and 7 figure profits doing little baby projects and see that if they can do it, I can do it. Absolutely.
Being around people that are in the game, doing what you need to do, it gives you that belief that it can be done, right?
Absolutely. And every single one of our events, Neil, we do a real deal presentation where you get to see the good, the bad and the ugly of a project. In the 14 odd years that we've been running this, we've got recorded in the vicinity of about 400 of those real deals where people can actually see the evidence of other people doing it and the obstacles they had to face, and not just what they were, but how they overcame that and what the outcomes of from a monetary perspective are, and just learn from the opportunities that other people took, the successes they did, and also learn from the mistakes they made, right? And go, well, I now know not to do that thing. And if we all take that pay it forward approach, help the next person along, this is the thing that I learned from this project. How do I help you, Neil? And then you do the same and you help me. Abundance, mate. There is plenty of deals for everyone. We're still going to be 400,000 homes short. I don't mind if you get an extra deal out of the process, mate, so long as you leave one on the table for me.
The deal of a lifetime comes along every day, doesn't it?
Almost, mate.
Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you. We're going to put all of your details in the show notes, so if anybody wants to reach out and find out more about PDN.
Good work. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you tune in the same time next week so you can stay up to date with all cash flow positive property updates.